All right, we are on equations, student handout, notes number 3, titled, Do We Use Equations in Real Life? So this is where we're going to start taking word problems and breaking it down to solve them. You're going to get familiar with this layout of I know, I need to know, plan and work in your solution. But let's start with the top with our sentence. It says equations can be used to find missing information excuse me, and solve problems. All right, just like in our last set of notes, we always wanted to find out what was the missing information that we needed to know. So we have this word problem that says the charge for a microwave repair visit was $81.21, including tax. If the tax was $6.70, how much was the repair visit? All right, so this I know box, this is what you know already. So you know that the tax was $6.70, and you know that the total cost of the whole repair was $81.21. You know that information. All right, and that's taken from the sentence, right? What I need to know. What do you need to know? You need to know the cost of the repair itself, not with taxes. All right, so that's what you are trying to find. How much should it cost to just repair it? All right, you know how much was added with tax and you know the total. So here's where you would draw and plan out your work. So this top bar right here represents the total price, which is $81.21, right? We know that much. And we know that it was $6.70 for tax. Notice that that $6 isn't really big, right? $81 compared, we talked about the model, it shows how big something is. Right here is the repair, which is represented by X. We don't know how much it costs, but we know that the tax was $6.70 and the total was $8.21. So in essence, your problem would look like $6.76 plus that X equals $81.21. Okay, so if you don't, or if you're trying to realize it, what you know is the things that we already put, right? We know the total was $81.21. The tax was $6.70. We don't know how much that cost of just to repair the microwave. That's what we're trying to find. So you have to add these two together to get that, right? Just like our last notes where we had to get X alone, same thing. You have to, since this one is over here, when you remember you don't see a sign in front of it, that means you subtract them because technically it would be adding. So you will have to subtract $6.70 from over here minus $6.70 over here. When you subtract that out, you have X on the side by itself like we need it, and you have $74.51. All right. So if you were to plug in $74.51 and add it to 670, this is where I'm gonna pull out the calculator. So we have our tax plus our answer was 74.51, and you get a total of, if you guys can't see it, that 81.21. All right, so you go back and check your answers with a calculator. All right, and so your solution will be the repair costs $74.51. All right, this breaks down every single step of the problem. All right, one more problem down below. Okay. It says, according to CBS in 2010, the average cost of a Super Bowl ticket was $3,509. This is $441 less than the cost of a 2015 ticket. How much was the ticket in 2015. So, what do you know? All right, I know that the Super Bowl ticket was 3,509 in 2010. So I know that in 2010, a 2010 ticket cost us 3,509, right? And we know that the 2015 ticket is $441 more than 2010. All right. Even though in the problem it says that it's less than the cost of the 2015, but we know that technically it will be $441 more than that prior year. Okay, so what you need to know is the 2015 ticket price. That's what we don't know. How much did that 2015 Super Bowl ticket cost? All right, so let's plan our work. Same model. We're looking for X now. We don't know how much that 2015 ticket costs, but at the bottom, we know 441 and 3,509, right? Because we know that if you were to show this in an equation, you'll have X minus 441 equals 3,509, where this is the 2010 ticket, and you know that in order to find it, you would have to add that 441 to this to figure out how much, because it is that much more than it. So when you do that, you're adding 441 on both sides, because the opposite of subtracting is adding. And when you add that, you have X equals 3,950. Okay, and you go back and check it, right? Add 3,000 in your calculator. You have 3,950 minus 441. You should get to 3,509. Okay, you can always go back and check. So for your solution, you would say the 2015 ticket costs $3,950. Okay, if you need to go back and rework those problems, go ahead. All right. Now we're going to turn to the back. All right. So on the back, you have 8 problems that you are going to read each problem, define a variable, write an equation, and solve for the missing number. So here is what we just did on the front, but it doesn't have those boxes, what I need to know, what I know, what I plan, and all of that. It doesn't have that information there, but you still have enough information to get to your answer. So let's read the first problem. It says the class average on test 1 was 84. The class average on test 2 was 8 points lower. What was the class average on test 2? All right, so I have pre-worked out these problems ahead. These boxes right here for your answers. So all of my variables are going to equal X, right? X is the only letter I'm going to use. So even though it says define a variable, just make sure it's always X. X is just easy. X or N. I prefer X because most of your tests and quizzes are going to be in X. So what you're trying to find, your X now, is what is the class average for test 2. So your missing value, my X is going to be the average of test 2, right? Because that's what I'm trying to find. right? And I know what test 1 is, and I know that the average is going to be 8 points lower, which technically means that test 2 is 8 points higher than test number 2. So the equation that you would write that will go with this would be to figure out what x is. You know that the x is 8 more than that test 1. And test 1 was 84. Right? So it's like honestly trying to think of, even though it says that it was fewer, lower, all right? So you know when you add, when it's over there with the variable x, it would be the opposite. So you would actually add it, right? So yes, it's lower. You would think it would be subtraction, but remember when we get x by itself, the opposite of adding is subtracting, okay? So now that we have our equation, all you have to do is just solve for x. So we want to get x by itself. And you have adding 8 over here. Remember in our last notes, you have to get the inverse or the opposite. You would subtract 8 from both sides. Now you have x by itself, and x equals 76. To check it, go ahead with your calculator. You know your average now is 76. So if you was just to put 76 right here where x is, so it'll be 76 plus 8. So let's see what we get. And you still get 84. All right, that to check your work. All right, so you could put right there, the answer is 76. All right, we're going to do 4 together, and then I'm going to let you guys do 4 on your own. Make sure you pause this, guys, just to try it. If you want to pause it and work on it on a separate sheet of paper, so if you do get it wrong, you could just go back and write your work on the notes paper. So let's move on to number 2. It says a Jaguar XJ220 is 41 miles per hour slower than a Bugatti Veyron, which can travel 253 miles per hour. How fast does the Jaguar XJ220 move? So we need to figure out the Jaguar. So X represents the Jaguar, right? And we know that it's 41 miles slower. So you're thinking slower is decreasing, right? So in a sense, when you do this, you need to find out how much slower. It's 41 miles slower than a Bugatti Veyron, which can travel. How far does the Jaguar travel? So we need to figure out, if we subtract, are we subtracting 41 miles from this 253 to get it, or should we be adding it? Okay, so when we think about it, we have x. Now instead of since it's slower, remember, sorry guys, since it's slower, that means technically you would be subtracting it. So now we have to think the opposite to get that. You know that it's going to be 41 miles per hour greater than what we're looking for. And we already know that the Bugatti travels 253. Okay, so here's the sense. The Jaguar is slower, 41, but when we set it up, we know what the Bugatti is, and we know that we would have to subtract it to get it, right? So remember the opposite, it says slower, right? But in order to get the opposite, we need to add it first and then subtract it, because the opposite inverse says to do that. So you would subtract 41 from both sides. Now you have x by itself. And now over here, x is 212. You go back on the calculator to check it, and it will work out to be 212 would fit that equation. All right, and number 3. A fence surrounds 2 sides of the backyard. The total length of the fence is 86 feet, with the longest portion measuring 51.5 feet. what is the length of the second side of the fence. So when you work this out, X is the second side of the fence. Okay, that's what you're trying to find, the second side of the fence. And in this case, you know that your total is 86, right? But you know that one side of it is already 51.5 feet. Okay, you know when you add these two, the total is 86. So then you would do the opposite. You know, if you're adding 51.5, you're subtracting 51.5. Remember, that's like an imaginary zero over there. X is by itself, and when you have that by itself, you get the total of 34.5 feet, and that 212 was miles per hour up here. All right, you will go back and check it. So to check it with the calculator, you would substitute that 34.5 where it says X. So 34.5 plus 51.5 should give you your total, which is 86. And when you check it, you still get 86. All right. So we can go ahead and write 34.5 feet right there. All right, number 4. In 1990, the average school lunch was $1.50, and it costs $2.85 more today. How much does the average school lunch cost today? So X means a school lunch cost for today, because that's what we don't know. All right, so we know that the average before then was $1.50, right? So now we need to figure out that if it was more today, remember, you kind of write it as the opposite, so it would be $2.50 right here, which gives you the cost of $1.50. All right, $1.50 is what it costs average right now, and you know that it was more today, so you're actually trying to do the opposite to this side to add it. Okay, so it's kind of like you have to think backwards, but the same, because even though it says more and you would think it would add, remember you have to find the opposite. So to get X by itself over here, you have to add $2.85 to both sides. Now X is by itself, and now you have that side to equal. You guys may use a calculator for this too as well. The total lunch cost would be $4.35. And if you go back and check that, $4.35 would be correct. All right, I want you to do 5, 6, 7, and 8 on your own and try it. Maybe get a scrap sheet of paper and do it on a scrap. So if you do get the answer wrong, you don't have to do a lot of erasing of your answer. So go ahead and pause and work on the last 4 problems. All right, for 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. Now, this one has some crazy words in it. I'm not going to try to pronounce this, but they're talking about skyscrapers in Dubai, and it says one that was 2,722 feet high, and the one in North Dakota was measuring 659 meters shorter than the Dubai scraper. So you're trying to find your X is for that KYLT1, correct? So remember how we said, like, if it's shorter, you're actually doing the opposite to get it right. So this will equal, right? So this is the Khalifa. total height, and you know that North Dakota is shorter, but technically it would be greater on if you think about it the opposite way. Because even though it says shorter, you're thinking subtraction. The opposite would be to add it to your unknown, which is figuring out the other skyscraper. So now to get x by itself, the opposite of adding is subtracting. Say that's 659. So now x is by itself. And when you take out a calculator and solve that problem, you are left with 2,063 feet. That should be the correct answer that you have. If you don't, pause it and make sure you work it out and you write this down. Okay, and number 6. It says your little sister is too small to stand on the scale. You decide to get on the scale with her and find your combined weight to be 112 pounds. You know that you weigh 94 pounds. How much does your little sister weigh? So this is like similar to the first problem. You know your total is 112, right? That's kind of easy. So your x is to find your sister weight. You know that you added your weight and it was 94. Okay? So now you need to find out what that is, what your sister weighed. But you know when you stood on it, you added 94 pounds to it. So in order to get x by itself, this is plus 94. To get rid of it, you have to do the opposite, is subtract 94. And when you subtract 94 from it, you have x equals 18. And to go back and check, you have 18, plug in for x, 18 plus 94 equals 112. So she was 18 pounds. Okay, that LBS stands for pounds too. Number 7. It says the average precipitation in Portland is 90.98 inches, and Scottsdale, Arizona has an average of precipitation of 10.32. What is the difference in the two cities? Now this one was a really basic problem. This one didn't really require anything but you to find the difference of 35.98 minus 10.32. That will give you the difference, okay? This one really didn't have for you to go and subtract another side of it. So when you're calculating, when you do 35.98 minus 10.32, you have 25.66 inches. And to check that, just type it into a calculator. All right, 25.66 inches. And last but not least, it says the high school dance team has 88 members and 17 of them hold a position on the student council as well. How many members are on the dance team but not on the student council? So you're trying to find out how many on the student council, but it tells you that of those 88, if you subtract 17 of them, they hold a position. So to figure out how many don't, you have to subtract. So this one was another simple one. Doing 88 minus 17 to figure out how many people on that school dance team was not in the student council. And it was 71 students who did not have a role in student councils. So 71, what should have been your answer. All right. So yes, this notes was a little bit longer, but it just required you to learn how to write the equation and define a variable and to solve it. Now, for your homework, I'm going to go ahead and show it to you. So if you have any questions, I can answer them. You guys would have, or maybe this is the part where you guys take a quiz. Let me just check. Okay. Yes, so you don't necessarily have homework for this today, but you will have a quiz that I am going to put onto Canvas for your homework grade. And the code for Canvas, let me think of something. A good word for your test. All right, your code is actually going to be Peyton, my dog. So the password for the quiz is Peyton. And if you don't know how to spell that, it is Peyton. All right, so your homework assignment is to do your quiz on Canvas. It's going to be called Equations Quiz Number 1. Okay, and you guys will complete that for homework. You need to turn that in, and it will be posted at the end of the day for that day. If you have any questions, let me know.